talking about influencers and influencer relations. So to the most important part, our influencers, and we have kind of a mix in there as well. But first we have Joy, who is our teens trending producer at Instagram. And you're not even graduated
Not
yet.
quite an alumni yet, but
Okay.
I will be really soon in class of 2018.
But you're already killing alumni, basically.
I'm trying.
Yes. And then we have Sophie, founder of angelfoodstyle.com, and obviously a really cool LA-based influencer. Thank you for being here. We also have Justin, who is an activation strategist at Quench Agency. So you're kind of the guy behind the scenes, but pushing that in. And then we also have Maria, who has New Kings, the Power of Online Influencers. You made the documentary. So thank you everyone for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Oh.
Great.
So first of all, let's start about how did you guys get into the business, and what made you want to get into the business? We'll start with Joy.
So I've always been passionate about communication and marketing, and I've been engaged in both entertainment and technology, and kind of sitting at that intersection for the past 2 years. What's really revolutionized those changes and helped brands get this huge global visible boost is the power of influencers. So from my experience from Lucasfilm to ThreadUp, working with kind of mommy bloggers, helping people understand Star Wars and Force for Change, to now my work at Instagram, it's very influencer heavy, but we're dealing with micro influencers or everyday influencers. So focusing on people on the platform who are kind of under 100,000 followers, like the everyday person, has been my passion, and empowering regular people to have a voice about the platforms and causes they care about.
Definitely. And Sophie, I know as an influencer who has a great following, how did you kind of get into the scene? I know a lot of people are wondering, can I get into it now? Is it too late? What would be your advice for that?
I don't think it's ever too late. I think it's a little more difficult now. I started about 5 years ago while I was still a junior here. So I had a little bit of a head start, although there were plenty of influencers who started way long before me. I think as long as you have your own developed voice and you have an exciting niche topic, or you really separate yourself from the rest of the pack, it's totally possible to start now.
Nice. And Justin, from starting out to now, what have been kind of the influencer trends that you've seen kind of go throughout the years?
I think the trends that I've noticed, and it's been such a short amount of time that these trends have, it's fairly new, but the bloggers that became Instagrammers and vloggers, and I think now things are even starting to go back to bloggers. And I think people are going to start doing more promoting their websites again, and not just Instagram content and not just Facebook content, but a little bit more content writing as well.
And what have you seen, Maria? I mean, you have talked to a plenty amount of influencers. So what have you, just from like their input and seeing what they have to say?
Well, it's been crazy to see how fast everything changes, and it's super exciting for me to be working, on this field, because it changes every single day. You need to, be updated and just like see how the algorithms change, how the platforms change. A very trendy thing right now, it's artificial intelligence and how they're using it, in influencer marketing, and just to kind of solve all the challenges and problems that we have in the space.
Nice.
Like fraud.
No, it's not like
thing.
There's so many issues, which kind of leads into the next conversation: earned versus kind of paid content. How does that go about? Is it actually beneficial to start out paying for, your followers, or just like, because you have to have a certain, following, or most people would say, in order to kind of be successful farther down along the lines. It's up for grabs.
Wait, so the question is if it's okay to buy followers?
Or like, is it beneficial? Like, what would be your best strategy for like, earned, like organic earned posts versus paid followers, which I know a lot of people talk about?
Yeah, well, for me, buying followers is like a no-no. Okay. You just have to gain followers organically, and by creating and producing really good content. I do think because of the algorithms, it's important to do pay social. We think as platforms as social media platforms, but they are more advertising platforms now. So in order to, just put your content out there and be sure that people are gonna see it, you need to put a little bit of money out there.
Nice. And from the agency side, what do you necessarily look for, I guess, in a social media influencer?
I think I would agree with you 100%. Like, you can't buy followers, and that's one of the things that we look for right away. And if there's any sort of hint that you've done that, I just won't work with you.
Okay.
And I think that's a good point too about it being social advertising as well as your post and your content and your channels. But you do have to put a little bit of money behind that as well, because as a brand and an agency person, I want to reach all of your followers. And if you're only reaching 2 or 3% of them, there's no real incentive for me to work with you if you're not willing to help out as well.
So what would you say you're most looking for in an influencer?
Really great engagement that's based on just authentic and true content. Like, you can tell when things are way photoshopped and way manipulated. Like, I want to be part of your life and what you're doing, so I want your content to be that authentic and to reach your audiences.
Nice. Well, and that kind of goes along with FTC compliance, which kind of protects the consumer and what they're going and seeing as the post. How do you make sure, or like, is there a way that consumers can even tell whether something's fake or not? Because I mean, even there are times where I'm like, oh, I can't tell. Like, it looks fine to me. How do you, like, what's going on?
On that note, I think Instagram picked up on that uncertainty right, coming from all consumers, and they've started to implement a paid partnerships tag. Yeah. So we've seen the traditional hashtag ad, hashtag spawn to indicate that something is an advertisement or paid or sponsored. But now what they're doing is slowly rolling out a paid partnerships tag.
Gotcha.
So that it's very clear whether or not an influencer or company is collaborating with another business account on Instagram, and they're only through verified, confirmed business accounts and partnerships.
Nice.
So I also, on the other side, have been an influencer while I've been in college, and I've been able to work with 7 for All Mankind and Smile Brilliant, and it's been so rewarding to be able to tag them in an official way and say, yep, this is a paid partnership, so that the people who are following and engaging with my content understand that it is a paid partnership.
Gotcha. I've seen the paid partnership actually just recently. So it's not enough anymore to just put hashtag ad.
No.
No.
Well, it's interesting because you used to be able to just say hashtag ad, hashtag paid, and there was no preference from what I could tell of the brands that I've worked with for the past 5 years. As long as it was clear in some way with those hashtags, you were okay. I've had brands before ask not to use that hashtag because they either weren't familiar with it. There was one brand that's a European company, and it was the first time they'd even done an influencer campaign, and so I don't think it was because they were trying to be dishonest necessarily. They were just like, why would we want to, make this look extra paid or like an advertisement? And my agency had to come back and say, because of the rules, we just can't do it the other way. It's too much of a risk for both the influencer and the brand, and it's just not worth it. And when the new feature with the paid what do you even call it, partnership on Instagram came out. It's interesting, I never saw an official notice about it.
Me either.
It just kind of appeared one day, and I touched base with my managers, and not everyone was using it, and so I just continued to use hashtag aid or hashtag paid and hashtag ad, and I didn't notice, but Instagram had flagged those posts because they were like, no, we want you to use our in-house kind of system to be able to tag these brands. And so I was alarmed at first because I had several of them, and I saw this page and it said these are the ones that are in violation of our new policy. So I had to go back and re-tag those. But you can't tag a brand unless that brand has gone in and authorized your account to do so. So not anyone can just post something and tag, obviously, a random brand. Otherwise, you would have people using it, dishonestly.
Instagram is really stepping up their game, because sometimes it feels like they're not doing anything, and then you just see these random things. So that's really interesting. And working with a ton of brands, how did you go about your first deal, or who reaches out to who, and how have you kind of seen it kind of grow over the years as well?
Well, when I first started, obviously you don't start working out with brands.
Yeah, of course.
You start just posting your own content. Like I said, it was about 5 years ago, and for the first 6 months of working or of posting on my site, I was probably at that point getting inquiries from brands, but it was not sooner than that. I think there's a big misconception that people can blow up in a day or overnight, and that all these brands will be knocking on their door, and it's not entirely true. You really need to build an audience to be considered someone that a brand finds valuable. So I'd say about 6 months to a year, brands were emailing. But it was also easier at that point. 5 years ago, it wasn't as saturated a market as it is now. And you can, I'd say to new bloggers, you can start small, work with local boutiques, host events at, stores near you, send pitch emails to brands. You don't have to be working with a huge corporation, like right when you start. And that's what I did. I started working with kind of smaller brands. They would gift me clothing. I would post. There was no money involved at first. It really took over a year to start making money doing it.
Nice.
So it's a slow build, yeah.
So that's a good key thing I think that people forget is just like slow and steady and trust the process overall.
Doesn't happen overnight.
Doesn't happen. No, it doesn't. And I think that's such an important thing because I feel like in social media era, like we want this like instant gratification of always kind of succeeding. So it's really refreshing almost to hear, someone who's really, successful at what they're doing kind of say that in that sense. Yeah. As well as that, would you guys say, maybe this is more for the agency side, that it's more important to have a high engagement, or would you say kind of click-through rate to a blog or a website?
I think it really depends on what your client's goal is from the start.
Okay.
Engagement rates, of course, are always what the big number that we look for. So I know that people are paying attention to your content, but I think if the brand comes to you and says, we have X goal and it's click-through rates, then that of course is going to be much more important than somebody just generating content and awareness for your brand. So I think it's really, and this is something I try to do with my brands and when I work with influencers, is from the start, set those goals. Don't just go into it thinking like you're going to get the world for what you're doing. It's more strategic than that. And I think that's a very key point to keep in mind when you're working with agencies as well.
Nice. And Maria, we didn't forget about you, but you having kind of like the most like analytical approach to influencers, how do you see like celebrity influencers differ from social influencers, and how do you see them going about, like brands wanting to work with them?
Well, I would say we have different kinds of influencers. We have celebrities, these Viners like Logan Paul, for example. He was an influencer and then became a social media star. Then we have mid-tier influencers that are influencers that have, between 15,000 to 100,000. And then we have micro-influencers. So it depends on, the kind of influencer you work with. But if you work with celebrities, it's almost like working with celebrities, like singers or the more traditional influencers that we know.
Definitely.
So.
Well, speaking of Logan Paul, today he actually was announced that he's not banned from YouTube anymore, but he is on probation still because of his very controversial suicide video, and which kind of leads into crisis management. Everything on the internet is not always happy, and there's rainbows and all of that. So how do you guys go about handling crisis management? You're like, we're perfect, we've never had a crisis.
I think it's a different thing. Like I post fashion, beauty, travel, lifestyle content. So there's going to be a little less risk there for crisis than someone like Logan Paul. He is by nature kind of looking for that sensational reaction to what he's doing, and that's why people watch him in the first place. So I've luckily never had to deal with a crisis on that magnitude, but I think if you're in comedy, that kind of comes with the territory. Comedians are intentionally putting out this content to probe people and see what kind of reaction they get. So I think that if in my genre, I don't think influencers are as concerned with that. The kind of crisis that we would get is maybe not just properly disclosing a partnership or being not truthful with products that we're using. But I think
I mean, with that though, would you say like when dealing with that management of like that product that you didn't post correctly, it's mostly with the brand?
You mean if it's not properly disclosed? Yeah,
I mean because consumers, I feel like, and it kind of went back to what I was saying earlier, may not know either. So it's like, how do you manage both crises on both ends?
I think you just have to be so upfront at the beginning of the partnership, like you said, be really clear about what the goal is. Is it PR? You just want word of mouth? Like, for example, a lot of high fashion designers aren't looking to sell thousands of units from one post because it's just not possible. The price point is too high. You're not going to convert at that rate, but you might get great PR, and they'll hire, maybe influencers with these massive followings, millions of followers, and knowing that maybe not all of them are going to buy this $1,000 bag, but it's more about the PR, and that person is kind of, like you said, a celebrity for the brand.
Yeah.
But then some brands might choose to work with a micro influencer who is actually going to push product. So it's very strategic about who they look for. And also looking at gender, a lot of, this is not necessarily what I do, but there are all these Instagram models who might have 80% male followers, and so if a brand, I think that this also happened maybe when this whole influencer world blew up, because brands didn't know. Like years ago, they might have hired someone to sell clothing, and it didn't sell, and they might have said, why isn't this working? This girl has millions of followers. Why didn't people buy this product? And then they realize, oh, well, 80 to 90% of our followers are males, so they're not going to be. So just stuff like that.
I think that important takeaway too is like knowing and understanding the audience, right? Like who is your audience first and foremost, and then secondly, what do they care about? And I think what we saw from the Logan Paul situation and from a lot of brands who've been having kind of gaffes recently is that like the world is watching, right? And with his audience in particular, it's made up of a bunch of young people. I don't think that young people today are the same way, when I was young, right? Like quote unquote, but rather that they care and they really prioritize social justice issues, and so they're very closely watching for how their favorite brands and personalities are engaging with issues of like race and identity and cultural sensitivity. So things don't go over their head as easy anymore.
And something I do have to say about crisis management, it's always better to be proactive and not reactive. So when you're gonna pick your influencer, do background checks, go through this vetting process, really make sure the influencer you're gonna be working with do have like the same values as your brand. So really, really be proactive and not reactive.
And I think on top of that, if God forbid things do go south, you're just open and own it. And again, I'll always go back to that word, that authentic and genuine, and be apologetic and mean it. And show that. And that's how you can really handle that crisis. Probably most crises on social, if you just own that mistake and take it back.
So you do think you can recover?
I think you can.
Definitely.
If you don't push and say, or start to argue and become argumentative, I think you can recover nicely.
I feel like that's true of so many. It's not even just this industry. If you own up to a mistake, I mean, I remember learning this in our crisis management classes here. How to respond. Like I remember our exam was they'd give us these situations and we'd have 15 minutes to think of, you probably did this too, figure out what to say and how to handle it. And it's people who stay silent that looks the worst. You have to be empathetic, really express the mistake. And something like that, like you said, applies more to Logan Paul. Also because there are no previews or kind of checkpoints. Like he's uploading this content. I don't know how, I'm not familiar with like comedy and how that works with uploading, but I know if I'm gonna create content for a brand, the contract says no swearing, no nudity, don't talk about this, no politics. Like it's very concrete, and then I send previews, and then the previews have to be approved, and it's this whole process. So it's easy to avoid that, but I'm sure with him, I don't know how does it work. Does he just upload it?
Your own platform, you can say absolutely
anything.
And that's the beauty of the internet too. So there's this line there that it's hard.
And this pressure to continuously produce content over and over. So there's like a line where you don't even realize almost as an influencer you're going there.
And I think in his case, he was probably thinking who his audience really is, and his true audience probably wasn't the reactive audience. So at the same time, he's got to learn how to juggle. It's such a wide audience with the internet.
Totally, especially YouTube, where there's tons of people watching. Well, Logan Paul, which I'm sure is totally up your arena, and teen trends, it's so funny because marketers and brands always want to know how can they reach teens. So how have you seen the industry go about doing that?
Honestly, I think teens trust each other. Right? So we're talking about micro and like community influencers. I think there's real potential to tap in there and pay attention to just what teens on the ground, right, or regular teens are doing. But I think another unique sort of method that we're seeing is creating experiences around the brand. And there are so many pop-ups that have been happening that are so fun. We saw different sort of museums that are like brand oriented. So there's like Museum of Ice Cream, you have Refinery 29's 29 rooms, you see Happy Place where and then Eminem and Lana Del Rey, right, are creating music-based pop-up. Nike and Adidas are doing regular pop-ups to where I'm like, are things even popping up anymore? Just have they always been there? But you're starting to see them create experiences for teens and for young people. And I think that's so valuable because everyone wants to say, I had an opportunity to be there. And so for teens in like rural areas or who just never would have the chance to take a picture, with a brand or engage with a product directly, it's really valuable.
Nice. I like to hear that because it is kind of a whole experience thing. And if anything, it kind of hypes it up on social media that you're like, oh, I want to be there. Like,
yeah,
what am I doing?
you see Chloe and Hallie and like Janelle Monáe, and they're all at this like exhibit, and you're like, wait, I can go there? Like, that's something that they definitely want to do.
Awesome. Great to hear. Well, we have a Facebook question, so let's go into it. Ravi from Facebook asks, should brands follow a long-term influencer association for a higher impact? Oh.
Should brands? Sorry.
Says, should brands follow a long-term influencer association for a higher impact?
I think it adds credibility. Like, I'll kind of go for this side and maybe someone could play devil's advocate. But when you see one person sort of, in the long term, like representing a specific brand, like you start to buy it and believe it more.
Totally.
Whereas like every single celebrity's popping up with like a Casper mattress and you're like, I don't know about this. Like a mattress, that's like a long-term investment. Like, did you just get that last week? So, whereas like, I don't know, like Steph Curry and like Britta, right? That's like another new one, but sometimes it goes over well because like you've added in humor, it's really funny. But I think that it can be beneficial to kind of stick with one influencer or team of them.
I think I would agree.
Yeah.
To have that partnership and have that longevity and get to know each other. And I think the content probably gets better because you're really dialing it in.
They're more invested. Well, that's kind of how all right, go ahead, Maria.
No, I was just going to say if an influencer sticks to a brand is because they really believe in it. And it's almost like if you think about an athlete, like a soccer player or a football player, like they carry on this brand all the time because they stick to it. Yeah. So I think it gives credibility and it's a good thing.
It's like an organic relationship.
Yeah, think about what DJ Khaled did for cocoa butter before he was even being paid to do it, and now they're selling like anti-they cocoa butter. Like
now he has all these brands.
He's got everything.
I'm like,
it's really smart.
I'm like, you need to sit down now. Well, as from the agency side though, there's like Kendrick who has Nike and it seems very organic. He grew up with Cortezes and all of that. Like, how do you go about finding that perfect person that you can have like a long-term relationship with?
I think sometimes brands come to you with the list of people they want to work with, or the space they want to be in, whether it's Kendrick or an athlete. I think it's really just, it depends. Like, I wish I had a hard answer, but I don't.
Yeah, no,
it's all research and it's a back and forth with the client.
Yeah, like I would say it's testing. Yep. You start a campaign, you work with an influencer. If it works well, then you can continue the partnership. Like, there's no way to know if you don't try it. So
there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically.
That's good to know too. I think
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So social media is just, it's really interesting because social media is just like this big space and everyone wants to do it right, but there's really no right or wrong way. Right.
Yeah. It's pretty early stages.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, and kind of going back to the Logan Paul thing of producing so much material, how do you go about, this might be more for you guys, but how do you go about producing, content that feels organic and you're not just pushing it out and feeling like you're still passionate about it?
I think when I'm like invited to participate in like promoting a brand, very first question is like, would I use this?
Gotcha.
And so I'm kind of at like a newer, I guess, or like more introductory level to where I feel like I am afforded that like privilege of being like, is this something that like I would actually use that people are going to believe and buy as I'm just launching my influencer journey? It has to make sense. But another thing is like there are ways around it. So like I was invited to do watch campaign. I don't wear a watch usually, but I know so many people who I was like, oh, this watch would look great on so-and-so. I'm a photographer, right? So instead of like wearing it myself, I'm able to like contribute my skill to it in a unique and interesting way. So I think just the first question you're asking yourself is just like authenticity. Like, does this feel good? Like, does it feel, right when I'm promoting it? And is it something I would actually use and people would believe that I would use? And then I don't really change up the language. I still speak with my own voice, when I'm promoting
That's the key, yeah. I agree. I think For me, I always start with the products and brands that I currently use. Like for 2018 in January after this new year, I sat down with my management and we opened up a new Google Doc and I wrote down all of the brands that I've been either trying or using. I went through my bathroom and looked at all the cosmetic brands, the hair brands, because those are the ones that are obviously most authentic. And from there we do outreach to brands. And I can say, look, I currently use your product. I love it. Here are screenshots. Maybe I've posted it before. Brands always want to see that someone's organically using them. I think even more now, I've had a lot of brands reach out and they or come to the agency and say, we want to work with girls or guys who have already been using this product. Do you have anyone? And if so, could you send me screenshots or posts of examples?
That makes sense.
That's the most ideal, but I think that it's not to say that testing something is not also important. I think if you're an influencer, people are looking to you for what's new, like maybe something just came out, and that's part of your job is to be testing. So I think it's a balance of authenticity and things that you are really interested in genuinely, but also, you're there to tell a story and you're there to test and try, and that's interesting too. So I wouldn't be scared to work with a brand that maybe you're not a long-term loyal,
sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And dwindling down, what would you guys say is just being in this industry, seeing how everything is going about, it's constantly changing, what would be your biggest advice for viewers? Start with Maria.
Oh, wow. But you mean in the content creator side, in
in any form of what was the greatest lesson you learned throughout all of this?
Just you keep reading so much about what's going on in every platform. Every platform is different. Facebook is different, Instagram is different, every platform is different. So there's no way to know it all, but you need to be constant in reading stuff and being updated.
Nice. All right.
I think to go along with that, I would say even taking to the next step to not just reading about what's going on the platforms, but being curious in general. It'll make your posts and your content better. Just staying with general trends and knowledge and being curious, because that'll make things a little bit more interesting, and I think for both the brand's perspective and the audience perspective.
Nice. Sophie.
So my advice is two-part, but related. I think we've seen so much of a trend and a loyalty towards Instagram and towards mobile apps and platforms and away from your actual blog and website. I think people now with the new algorithm, whether you like it or not, it's an example of the fact that it's changing, and you don't own your Instagram page. Instagram owns all your content. You waive your rights the second you make a new account. Your blog or website is the only platform that you truly own and that you can truly control. And I think a lot of influencers, myself included, often forget to focus on it, because a lot of jobs most of my jobs now are social. Friends want Instagram posts, and it's fewer and fewer are let's do a blog post plus an Instagram or a round of social. So I have to really keep myself on top of the blog and make sure new content is there, because at the end of the day, that's really all I own. And if something happens to Instagram or Twitter or whatever your strongest platform is, you're kind of stuck.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. And then the last part I would just add is that if there is a new platform, jump on it early, because it is really hard to catch up. You see a lot of people now with high Instagram numbers, and it might not be based on quality. It's because they were on there early. So while you focus on your blog, also jump on the new platforms.
And my top piece of advice is that just get started. And in the way that brands are proactive about finding micro celebrity influencers, you as a potential influencer can be proactive in pitching yourself to those brands. So if you're a student, there's Chegg, there's Scholastic, there's Microsoft. If you're a mom, there's Pampers, there's Play School, right? Are you someone who lives and breathes? There's all the lifestyle brands at your disposal. So find those brands in your space that might align with your lifestyle and just go pitch.
I think I'd love to add one thing to go with that. When you're approaching brands, make sure that what you do aligns with the brands that you're pitching. There are so many times I get a pitch that they want to work with, say, a food company, and you go and look and it's all makeup shots. That doesn't fit, so now I'm probably just never going to work with you.
Definitely.
So keep that in mind as well.
Just being aware of that, definitely. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you. I know you are very busy, so your knowledge is just amazing. So we appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Lauren Alvarez, and as always, fight on. you.